Hello, my not yet dead or famous fam. It's Courtney here again, and I do have to give you a trigger warning again because we are talking about Christopher Jones again, which means that once again we will be discussing rape and domestic violence. So I wanted you all to be aware before you continue to listen. And my goodness, don't some dead people really suck?
Hello, and welcome to Dead and Kind of Famous, where we dig into the life stories of dead folks who enjoyed a touch or two of fame in their time.
And now reside permanently in the Hollywood Forever Cemetery.
I'm Marissa Rivera, and I know that when you cook rice, it's 1 part rice, 2 parts water, and other than that, I know nothing.
And I'm Courtney Blomquist, and I know nothing except about everything that we're going to talk about today. Today we are talking about Christopher Jones again. We are picking up where we left off.
Part two,
yes.
baby.
So if you did not listen to part 1 yet, it would behoove you to go back and listen to it now before listening to this episode, of course. You want the whole story, don't you?
Don't ya?
Yes.
Let's start where we left off. What did we leave off with in part 1?
We left off with Christopher Jones crashing his Ferrari in Ireland while filming Ryan's Daughter. And we specifically left off with the fact that he has said that he has a death wish, essentially. He didn't say that exactly. Hold on. You know what? Let's reread this. He said, "Sometimes I feel like James Dean's Avenger. Maybe I'm a continuation of the whole thing. A piece of the puzzle's gone because Dean was too wild and had an accident, but he was the real thing. Most people are afraid to die, and that's what makes you the real thing, whether you're afraid to die. I'm fascinated with death, that kind of death." He had a death wish.
He had a James Dean death wish.
Yes.
He wanted to die like James Dean died.
Exactly. So that's where we left off, which is, thrilling. What a great exit point for us, really, actually. It's such a cliffhanger. I mean, maybe it's not. We told you he survived. It's not really a cliffhanger. We're still talking about him. I mean, he didn't survive long enough to not be on this podcast because he is dead now, just not from that. So,
well, let's continue on and see how he died. For real.
So, we were talking about his co-star, Sarah Miles, British woman. And
who was like, he's not that bad.
She was just diplomatic.
She was very diplomatic.
I think she was like, again, we talked about like his first wife being like this, but actors, I think, are, especially female actors are very empathetic people who are maybe sometimes too forgiving. That's a little bit of I would say it's a fatal flaw, I think, of many people, maybe not all, but right.
Okay, I agree with that.
I'm not going to speak about everyone in those terms, but I don't think it's that uncommon.
I mean, at least for the women, the actresses in his life close to him had a lot of empathy and forgiveness for him.
And it was like the 60s and 70s, like just people, well, women were too understanding in general. So a lot of women were anyway. Not Gloria Steinem. She wasn't. She said, fuck that. That was her time too. But anyway, I digress. Okay. So it's hard to parse out the exact timeline of Christopher's personal troubles with all the filming debacles of Ryan's Daughter. But it was during the making of this film that Christopher learned of the death of Sharon Tate in the Manson family murders. And
okay, along with the rest of the world.
Yes.
Okay.
So this hit Christopher especially hard because according to him...
Why? Oh, God, why?
According to him, they'd had an affair when he was filming in Italy. He was filming Brief Season, which we've briefly discussed. And Sharon Tate was there filming The 13 Chairs, the last movie she filmed, which was released posthumously after her death. So now there wasn't really any other people who spoke about Sharon's relationship with Christopher, so it's debatable whether it ever occurred. But Jones and Sharon Tate had originally met at the Chateau Marmont, as Jones typically made the famed hotel his residence when he wasn't abroad in the late 60s. He had lengthy...
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That is
yes.
such actor behavior.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. He had lengthy shooting engagements in Ireland and Italy. I mean, that's what we're talking about right now. His arc was pretty much in Europe. Like, his big peak movies were all filmed in Europe. So
it must be nice.
I know.
Like, wow, to have a job take me to Europe for a year. He was in
and bring
Ireland
your
for a
Ferrari
year.
for you to freely crash in the style of James Dean.
So according to Christopher, he had an affair with Sharon Tate. Now, was this like a full-on relationship, or did they sleep together like once?
First of all, I don't know if any of that happened. You know, he's, as we should now know, he is an unreliable narrator.
Yes.
So this is all, like I said, I'm trying to put facts in this, but it's very difficult sometimes. This is definitely one of those things. So I'm trying to hit it from all sides.
I feel like he
sources,
met her and he had a whole fantasy about sleeping with her and never actually did.
That is very
mourned,
possible.
And mourned the loss of the potential of the fantasy that he had.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it could be anything because, okay, so he did meet her at the Chateau Marmont. A lot of people, that's something that somebody was...
That happened all the time.
Yeah, it happened all the time.
Actors met each other all the time at the Chateau Marmont.
Yeah, some people said they met in Italy, but like they didn't. They met at the Chateau Marmont. So that's one thing that is a fact. Other occasional neighbors at the Chateau Marmont while he was there included Jim Morrison and his longtime girlfriend Pamela Corson. And Corson had actually once propositioned Jones for sex in the hotel's parking garage in retaliation for one of Jim Morrison's flings. And a lot of people, that tracks.
Who corroborated this? She did?
She didn't, but it basically, like, if it didn't happen, she did stuff like that all the time because there's a bunch of stories like her about that.
Whenever
it
Jim Morrison would step out of line, she'd be like, well, if you're doing that, then I'm going to pick someone. I can play that game. I can pick someone up in the parking lot if I want.
Exactly. So, yeah. And it was the swinging 60s. Swinging. All right. So, so fun fact. Nothing ever happened at the chateau between Jones and Tate, but once they were both in Rome, San's husband, which for her was Roman Polanski, Jones claims that she invited him up to her room, offered him a joint, either marijuana or opium, depending on the source that you read, the interview.
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even know you could make opium joints. I didn't know that was a thing.
Maybe it's not. Again.
I'm gonna Google it. I'm gonna Google it. Are opium? Hey
you can
Siri,
smoke opium.
Are opium joints a thing?
I found this on the web.
Oh, she's not gonna say it. She's just gonna. Siri, read, you lazy bitch.
Gosh, Siri.
Oh my gosh. Either way, what I mean to say is they either smoked opium or marijuana, depending on the source, depending on, honestly, the interview that Jones gave with different people saying different things. So yes, Jones claims that she invited him up to her room, offered him a joint, either marijuana or opium, depending on the interview he was giving at the time and what he decided to say, and an affair between them began. But this is not necessarily true, as I've said. For one thing, Sharon hadn't made it known to anyone, even her sister, to whom she typically confided everything. Also, she was pregnant at the time, and Polanski and others have said that as soon as she learned a baby was on the way, she wouldn't touch a glass of wine, let alone casual drugs. There is apparently one account by an unnamed source in the trashy book, The Roman Polanski Story, that says, and I've heard that it's trashy. I didn't read it. I've heard that it's just a lot of it's gossipy. It's
Right,
you know,
right.
It was written
A lot of
after,
hearsay.
Yeah, and it was written after his statutory rape situation.
Mm-hmm.
So it just was feeding off of a lot of buzz,
Right.
and stuff.
Right.
And it's described as being trashy. So anyway, in that book, it says that Sharon had a retaliatory affair in Italy, but no names are mentioned. And it's an unnamed source who says that. But of his alleged time with her, Christopher said,
I loved being with her. Other women I've been with, I couldn't remember if my life depended on it, but she stuck in my mind.
Ooh,
Yep.
okay. Memorable lady.
I just also want to say I love that you're sticking with a Southern accent.
And he does not have one.
He does not have one. He's like a burnt out hippie that's like, the mothers are out to get me, man. And you're like, I'm a suave, sexy Southern gentleman. And I love it. It's our Christopher Jones.
Yeah. It's who I want him to be.
He's like sitting here as a ghost being like, that's not my fucking voice. I got rid of my Southern accent.
So I could book more jobs.
Yeah, because I hated my mother. All right.
Oh my God.
All right. In any case, there is one for sure connection between Christopher and Sharon. Jones' manager, Rudy Altobelli, owned the infamous property on Cielo Drive where Tate was murdered. In fact, he'd been with Jones when he was filming Ryan's daughter and had to fly back to Los Angeles as soon as he learned of the murders because it was his property. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so that's a real connection. Now, it was also during Ryan's daughter that Christopher had been dating Olivia Hussey, and she was also represented
What
by...
a last name.
Yep.
What a last name.
Yep. And she was also represented by Rudy Altobelli. Maybe that's how she and Christopher met, but I'm not entirely sure.
But
anyway,
he was the connective tissue between
he was
them.
the connective tissue. So reminder, Olivia Hussey was the original Juliet. So she was, and that movie had like just come out. She was getting nominated for awards for it. So she was kind of a big deal.
On
And
the
so-
rise.
Yes. And so and very young. She was 18 at the time. So he's dating her and he was older than that. I think like almost 30. So whatever.
Classic.
Yeah. But anyway, so he was dating her. She had wanted to get married, but Christopher said they should wait. It seems that they split up and she left Ireland for Los Angeles and moved into the house on Cielo Drive after the murders had happened.
What?
I know. It's crazy. It's just crazy to me that anyone would be willing to live there after that. But according to her, the property was, quote, the safest house in Hollywood because there was a button that buzzed directly to the police and there were no bad vibes anywhere.
What?
How is that fucking possible?
No bad. Listen, that has 18-year-old all over it.
She's like, let me just walk inside with some sage and see if there's any bad vibes here.
Let me feel some feelings.
Yeah.
And also, is this free? Great. No
Yeah.
bad vibes here.
I don't know why she cared. I'm sure she was doing quite well. It does not make any sense.
That's wild.
It makes no sense.
That's almost the craziest thing we've heard so far.
I know it is. This whole section is like, what the fuck?
What the fuck?
So, like, okay. Also, there was, I don't think I even included this because it's so confusing to me. It like makes no sense. She was going to go live before Sharon Tate was murdered. She was planning on moving there anyway to help her with the baby when she didn't know her at all. And they had only spoken on the phone just because of the Rudy Altobelli connection, which I'm just like, it's not like she's an au pair. You know what I mean? She's a famous actress. Like, why the fuck would she help a random person with her baby? It does
Again, 18-year-old behavior. That is some 18-year-old behavior if I ever saw it.
Yeah, but then, okay, so she didn't know Sharon Tate, but she had spoken to her on the phone. She said she was very sweet, whatever. And then it's like you're going and living in the house where it's not like she didn't know her at all. You know what I mean? It just makes it It's all...
Maybe they had one of those like instant connections and they were like you and me.
Yes, but even if they did, I wouldn't want to stay in the house you were murdered in.
Well, this was before she was murdered, Courtney.
Well, when she said she was going to go, but then she did actually go live there.
No, yeah, that's crazy.
Yes, you know what I mean? Like,
it's crazy.
What the... She said there weren't any bad vibes after the murder.
Doubtful.
Yeah.
How long did she live there?
I don't know. There's not an answer for that. Hers is the one memoir I didn't read. It came out more recently. But yeah. So that's from her memoir though. She said that all she felt was sweetness for Sharon and she never felt afraid. Yeah. But contrary,
just a big deep breath on that one.
I know. Yeah, I just don't know why everyone in this time period was like, "Hey, that sounds fucked up. Let's do it." But that's kind of what's going on.
Sign me up.
Yeah, and everyone, her also just bad vibes detectors. We're all talking about people who were in Christopher's life, and he had a lot of, I'm not even trying to completely throw him under the bus, but dude had some bad vibes. So anyone who's like, I didn't feel it, you don't have a good bad vibes detector.
No, your detector's broken, sweetie.
Yeah.
Again,
so,
18.
Yes, not good.
She hasn't developed her intuition yet.
Nope. Her brain's, till 25 or something? Yeah, she's not done. So, okay.
She's not done cooking.
Nope. So contrary to the fact that she said she didn't feel any bad vibes, she was never afraid, she claims in her memoir, which is called The Girl on the Balcony, that Cielo Drive, yes, of course, because she was Juliet. The titles of these memoirs,
my God.
I don't know if that one or Shelley Roman numeral 2 is better, because I do love that so much.
Wow.
Okay, so in her memoir, she says that Cielo Drive was also the location that Christopher, get ready, raped her after their relationship had come to an end, adding one more tale of horror to an already horrific place.
Wow.
She also says that the rape resulted in a pregnancy that she aborted. I'm sorry, I know this is a lot. We're like, it's a lot.
Well.
Oh, God.
God.
Yeah.
That's awful.
I know. And it's okay. So her book.
I don't know what's happened. Has this house been torn down? Does it still exist? Do we know?
I feel like it probably has been torn down.
I wonder if she felt bad vibes after that. My goodness.
I'm looking it up. Okay, they wanted to rid the property of the stigma once and for all. So yes, it was torn down. I'm sure it was.
Okay, read the whole thing. Read the whole thing.
150 Cielo Drive was torn down in 1994 and replaced by an 18,000 square foot Mediterranean style spec house nicknamed Villa Bella. I hate that. Anyway, the 9-bedroom, 13-bathroom mega mansion was Weintraub's attempt to rid the property of stigma once and for all. He even changed the address to 166 Cielo Drive for good measure. So I'm guessing Weintraub was the new builder owner. Wow, yeah.
So it's torn down, rebuilt as something completely different, and given a completely different address.
Yeah, but why would you also change it to 166? Like everyone knows, like just get rid of double sixes if you're trying to or triple sixes. I guess the worst number, but still, I would stay away from the number 6. I would have chosen 7s because that is a luckier number and feels more holy because it rhymes with heaven, and that's just the way my brain works.
Cielo is Spanish for sky.
That's right. Exactly. It fits. It fits.
You know what? If only we were multi-million-dollar developers.
If only. I will say that Olivia Hussey's book came out after Chris's death, and he is not here to defend himself, but after what happened with Susan Strasberg and what she had to say in her book, it isn't all that far.
It fits a pattern.
It fits a pattern, and it's not all that far-fetched that something like this could have happened. Yeah, because especially since he really didn't deny what she said in her book.
At all.
Yeah. Except that he actually weirdly did deny that they did a lot of drugs, which I feel like is like the weirdest thing to deny because it's like, of course you did a lot of drugs. Why are you lying about this?
Right. It was
like
the
people
60s.
saw you.
Maybe he doesn't remember. Maybe he did so many drugs he doesn't remember that he did
but
them.
like people are like, I saw you high out of your mind all the time. You know what I mean? Like, what are you talking about? Anyway, in any case, back to Ryan's daughter. Christopher was in Ireland when he learned of the Manson murders, and he was devastated by the news of Sharon's death. It caused him to check out in a major way during the filming of Ryan's daughter. Sarah Miles, who we have discussed, wrote...
His co-star.
Yes, his British co-star, wrote extensively about her time working on Ryan's daughter, and she says that her love scene with Jones was meant to be the climax of the movie. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
But according to her, it was its biggest disaster. As I mentioned, the film was shot in Ireland, and there were weather issues that led to a drawn-out production schedule and a need to transport the bluebells and moss of the wooded location of their love scene to the inside of a barn due to rain. And I have watched the clip of this movie, which I can find for you to watch.
Yeah, cue it up.
So the scene from Ryan's daughter that we're watching right now, they're, on horseback.
Riding through beautiful bluebells and fields, and Christopher looks very dashing on horseback, I must say.
He does. And his hair is like kind of combed and well kept, and he's supposed to be a British officer.
He looks like a gentleman.
Yes, he does. And he's wearing like a...
How looks can be deceiving.
Yes. Oh, what an actor. He's just playing the part that isn't his real self.
Sure is.
Okay, so... Yes, all of what we're seeing right now is they're wandering outside, but there comes a point where basically like they get off of the horses is what Sarah talks about, and then they get onto the ground, and that whole part, once they're on the ground, it's like they were inside of this barn, and they put all of these beautiful flowers and all this stuff because they were supposed to have this love scene outside. They had to like put all of it in the barn.
Right. They had to relocate all the foliage.
Yes.
To film indoors because of the weather constraints.
Right. So it's like, which is kind of like a precarious situation. If you don't move quickly, everything's going to die and not look great,
Right.
So
let's fast forward to the sex scene.
Yes. So Christopher, I think it's just the very end of this. This is so long.
They're literally riding around with silent sexual tension.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. And then now the horse is drinking. It's very picturesque and very beautiful. And now he's gonna rip her shirt open.
He's taking off her scarf,
and she's
her red scarf.
Breathing heavily.
Oh, he just flung it away. He just flung away her scarf.
Yep.
Took off her jacket. Button, and then she's like, "Wait."
Yeah.
And
no, keep going.
He goes for her neck, and then
now there's
titty.
a titty. Yep.
Titty out.
So
they're making out.
They're making out. They're it's actually not the way.
This is inside.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know that it's actually very seamless. They did a really good job. I think this is outside.
Right,
like they're cutting between things a little bit, but it's very seamless. And then they end up on the ground. See, now they're going to the ground. And here, they're definitely inside here.
Right.
So, but it cuts away at this point. But like, so this part though is actually important to note. Like he looks, I don't know, if you wanted to judge his performance, he's kind of like, oh, I'm unsure of myself, or like, can I move forward with this or whatever. He's like a little bit hesitant.
Tentative.
Yeah, tentative. But according to Sarah, that's because he was... Well, let's go through all of it. Basically, like this took many days to do this part. Just the part where they're on their, like, move to their knees, move to the ground. That was what was filmed in the barn. And it took multiple days because that's when Christopher decided to get difficult. He had just found out about Sharon's death. He was completely impossible to work with at this point. So he totally checked out.
Which is... The perfect time to check out is during an intimacy scene. My goodness.
An intimacy scene with fragile foliage that could easily die. That's been like all of this time and effort.
Oh my God.
And so he checked out and would not cooperate at all. He just stood there on set staring into space pretty much. And when David Lean, the director, frustrated, asked him why he was being so difficult. He, in Christopher's own words, suddenly, quote, got religious and said he didn't work on Sundays. While they were all already there, everyone already showed up. Everything was like,
oh my god!
And this is like days of film too. So like film is rolling.
Oh my gosh! If you work in the industry at all, you know this was like a nightmare set.
Yeah,
like nightmare set, nightmare scenario.
Yeah, it's like too late for him to fire him.
Yeah, way too late. They'd have to reshoot the entire movie. They're a year in at this point.
Yep. So really, really bad. And he continued to be difficult and uncooperative until Sarah colluded with Lean to drug him.
What?
Yes.
That's a twist.
Yep. I told you this was going to get crazy. That's just really crazy.
What the fuck? They drugged him?
Yes. This is why I just want to explain. It took me forever to work on this episode because I was like, oh, he's mentioned in like these 3 different memoirs. That's probably like half a page. No, all of these crazy stories were in all of them. And I was like, oh, well, okay, we're sucked in now.
Imagine, quote unquote, having to drug your coworker so that they do their fucking job.
It's crazy. Okay, so this is in her book. She talks about it. She never mentions what drug she gave him. I think she just refers to it as a tranquilizer of some
like
kind.
Like a Xanax.
Yeah,
or
she
something.
doesn't
like
say what it is.
Calm the fuck down.
I don't think she knew what it was.
Job.
It was given to her. She was like, this is all. It was not like her idea. Like it was given to her to do it because she's like the nice one, you know.
Oh my gosh! And she was probably like, "Here, darling, have a cuppa."
Yeah,
and like it was laced with some Xanax.
Well, he let her into his trailer. Because she knew, you know, she, like I said, she was nice. He was nice back to her. He was just being difficult. He wasn't like directly shitty to her. I think she just felt she did talk about feeling like kind of unwanted and not sexually attractive and whatever, just because it felt like they're showing up for this sex scene and he's like, no, I don't want to do it. I can't get in the mood. Even though he didn't say that, it felt like that to her, which I can totally understand.
What a weird form of rejection.
It's so weird. It's like you're getting paid to be here. We're not even
paid to be romantic with me, and suddenly you can't work on Sundays and you don't want to touch me.
Yeah, it feels a lot like I can't with this woman. And she even asks him at some point like is it me? And he's like, no, like, you know, like all like I'm an angry angsty teenager. No, it's not you. The one thing that she knew, though, was that Christopher was actually religious about was eating his goddamn cornflakes in the morning. So she gently knocked on his trailer door, acted as the devoted listener to his woes, and was able to sneak an unidentified barbiturate or tranquilizer of some kind into his sad, soggy breakfast. And the result was, well, they got him to do the scene where they slept together. But unfortunately, the result was that Christopher actually slept during it. We didn't get to that part. They cut away during this clip that I found of this scene. But apparently, according to her, that's what happened.
He
and
passed out
on top of her, and she had to squirm around underneath his lifeless, knocked out body to create the appearance of a satisfying sex scene. And at one point,
my God.
Yeah. At one point, like David Lean was like, can you try to do, and she's like, I'm doing the best I can.
She literally has like a 200-pound man on top.
She's
dead weight.
She's got
on top
Bernie
of her.
from Weekend at Bernie's on top of her, and she's like, "Oh, you're such a good lover."
Wow, what a great lay in this beautiful forest.
Yeah. So,
well, bravo to her for doing the most.
Yeah, and some people, like, this movie did not do well at the time. But some people since think it's a beautiful movie. I mean, it's beautifully shot.
It is.
I'll say that.
It's very beautifully shot.
So he's a very famous director. It can't be all bad, but I just think, yes, it was a nightmare set. It was a nightmare filming situation, not just because of him, but also because of the weather. I just think everyone was like done after this.
Yeah, everything was difficult.
Yes.
I can't, oh my God, I can't get over the fact that she had to act out a sex scene with a fully asleep meat popsicle. Like, what the fuck?
I don't even know what to say. It's like, it's crazy. And he admits to it too, like being like in his interview with Pamela DeBar, he talks about like this situation of him saying he got religious and whatever. So this isn't just her saying this. Like he didn't say that they drugged him. I don't know if he even knows that. That is in her book only. But I mean, she said she did it. She admitted. Anyway, this was the last film Christopher did until he reappeared once in a random 1996 film called Mad Dog Time, which was which no one remembers. I mean, definitely not.
1996, Mad Dog Time.
Yeah, and the reason he did it was because it was directed by his Wild in the Streets castmate Larry Bishop, who had played a member in his band.
What did he do between? What has he been doing?
These
How
are
has
the
he
lost
been living?
years.
The lost years, seriously.
Yeah, so that's it. So
when
like,
was Ryan's Daughter filmed?
1969. Yep.
And then he didn't work again until 1996.
Yep. So we know that he did not pass away until 2014. So what the hell was he doing from 1969 to 2014?
My God.
Besides Mad Dog Time.
Okay, what is Mad Dog Time about?
It's like a spy movie, like a heist spy movie.
Did he play like a major part, or was it like just a bit
I think it was just, no, I don't think he was not the lead character. No.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, there are no small parts.
There are no small parts. So the one thing I can say, well, I can say a lot actually, but like generally there seems to be a combination during these years of sculpting, painting, a revolving door of women, children, drugs, and undiagnosed mental illness that colored his final 3.5 decades of life. So just as a little...
Just an exhausting 30 years to the end.
Yeah, like, or just a muddy, confusing one, truly.
So he has children.
Yep, he does.
Multiple children.
Yep, he sure does. So we're going to have fun with this because we're going to actually read part of this interview I keep referencing. But I keep mentioning this interview with ex-groupie turned journalist Pamela DeBar. She has a book that I haven't read, but I would like to. It's called I'm With a Band, and it's all like kind of how she started down this road, this like other version of herself after being essentially like Penny Lane.
A groupie.
Yes. So now I need to clarify that the interview was one of, if not the only interview Christopher did after 1969, and it happened in 1996. 26 years later. So truly, like, everything about him up until this point was absolutely a rumor. Absolutely, like, I think I saw him in the street. I think whatever. Like, he was just a rumor because people are like, I don't know what's going on.
A ghost, a specter.
Yes, truly. Even alive, he was a ghost.
My goodness.
So the best part about this interview is that Pamela is adamant that she saw Christopher with her own eyes, barefoot, high, and, quote, looking like he hadn't bathed in a month outside the psychedelic conspiracy in 1973.
What is the psychedelic conspiracy?
It was a head shop. So like
a smoke shop.
Yeah. Like, yeah, exactly. Sold bongs and shit.
So was he homeless at this point?
Probably, at least partially. Like, anyway, yeah, like a little bit, not it, like transient is what I would say. So she interrogates him about this in the interview at length because she knows what she saw. Read this back and forth with me.
Okay, you be Pamela, I be Chris.
All right.
Obviously.
Yeah, so I'm Q. You're right.
Okay.
After you disappeared from sight, there were rumors you'd suffered a breakdown, were broke, homeless, living on the street, even working the streets.
Fuck 'em, I don't care.
You really don't care?
I don't. All I want is a Lotus, a Ferrari, or a Lamborghini.
Don't you want to set the record straight?
Yeah, right, set the record straight. For who? For who?
Chris, are you going to be candid with me about all these rumors?
If you tell me what you heard, yeah.
It's not just what I heard. I saw you in 1973 in front of the psychedelic conspiracy on the Sunset Strip, and you were homeless. You had no shoes. You were talking to yourself.
I had no shoes. That wasn't me.
I saw you. This isn't a rumor, understand?
Just give me a break. I may have fucked around at times, but I was never on the street with no shoes. Never. That was not me. That was John Gott.
It was you. We had met, remember?
I don't know. I might have been going through a late hippie stage. It was very brief.
It looked like you'd been doing it for quite a while. Were you living out of your car?
I didn't even have a car.
When you decided to drop out, was it a conscious decision?
All I knew was I was alive and I made myself unavailable. I admit I was living like Tarzan a bit.
Why?
David Lean had tried so hard to turn me into an English officer, which is the epitome of trained, so I went the opposite direction. I had to go to the total opposite extreme, reverting back to Tarzan, become totally primitive. Otherwise, I'd have been like the guy I'd played in the movie. If you had been under David Lean's iron fist for a year, he drove me crazy, man, trying to turn me into aristocracy. Trying to turn me into aristocracy. Trying to turn me into
aristocracy.
Aristocracy.
I like that. I like this pronunciation with this accent.
We're keeping it. We're moving on. He shell-shocked me for that part. But I don't know that. Later back in L.A., I was mumbling and incoherent, though.
You were. And it looked like you hadn't eaten, slept, or bathed in a long time.
I probably hadn't.
And you were on something. It may have been acid, speed.
I wasn't high. I was flipped out on the agony and the ecstasy. Let me tell you, if you have two managers trying to rob you, an ex-wife driving you crazy, and everybody's after your fucking money, I went through a Howard Hughes kind of thing.
You're really telling me you did it on purpose?
I did do it on purpose. I wanted to do nothing. The 1971 death of Jim Morrison really fucked me up more than anything else. What the fuck?
I know.
All these different deaths. He's like, yeah, all these people's deaths really threw me for a loop. Okay.
You and Jim Morrison had similar looks. You'd been friends? And then it says pointing to his head.
We were similar here, and we kept going with the same chicks.
How close were you with him?
I felt empathy for him, and I identified with what he was saying. The fact that he died that young really fucked me up. Anyway, Pamela, you must have seen me on an off day.
I know, it's so crazy.
Wow. Okay. Anyway, Pamela, you must have seen me on an off day.
An off day? You hadn't had a bath for a month.
Okay, well, maybe I was bumming. I looked like the curse of Cain, right? How do you know? Okay. Well. Jesus Christ.
Okay.
Wait, okay. Breathe. Get into the accent. Okay. Well, okay, maybe I was bumming. I looked like the curse of Cain, right? How do you know I'm not the curse of Cain? I went through my Cain phase, a vagabond on earth.
How long did that period on the street last?
Not that long. A year, maybe. Who knows why we go through that shit. Look at John Drew Barrymore. He's looking for a place to live right now. I had never gone through any of that. I was fascinated by going to the other side. I had to. I didn't mean to do it. It was something higher than me that made me do it. I had nothing to do with it. You think I wanted to do that?
Like, he's not well.
No.
He's not well during this interview. No. And we're talking about a time period. We're talking about like 3 years after he filmed Ryan's Daughter or whatever, right, that she saw him, and she's talking about that. And he sounds very unwell then. But this interview, he sounds really unwell too. He sounds absolutely like he's going back and forth with everything. It sounds like, to be honest, I bet my impression of this anyway is that it's somebody recounting a time period in their life when they were so fucked up on everything that it's like, well, this happened, but actually it was like this and whatever. And they don't even know.
They don't know because they were out of their mind.
Because they were out of their mind. That's what's going on with him, in my opinion. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's what, right.
that's what Christopher's saying.
That's why I wanted us to read that, because it's just like, I can't summarize that at all. That's just fucking wild.
My God.
So he clearly like doesn't really want to talk about this stage in his life. I mean, he's never talked about it before. This is the first interview he's done in like 26 years. So Pamela didn't let him off the hook, which I love. I loved that. She's like, nope, I saw you. And then it's like, yes, like you said, Sharon Tate's death really messed him up. But then actually it was really Jim Morrison, who he didn't even really know.
But he had a lot of empathy for them,
Like, what-
for him, because they fucked all the same women.
Yeah, what the fuck? I mean,
fuck?
the mental illness of it is just, it's there. It's
Yeah.
clearly there.
Clear as day.
Yes. So there were other revelations worth mentioning in this crazy interview as well. For one, Christopher had fathered several other children after Jennifer, his daughter with Susan Strasberg, with various women. Literally in the interview, Pamela asks, how many children do you have?
7 or 8.
How can you not know which it is?
Well, one woman was pregnant and left town. I never saw her again.
You fathered 7 or 8 children by how many different women?
4 or 5.
Like, what?
Yay. First of all, birth control. Number one, birth control.
But also, if you don't know how many children you have, like,
Then probably stop having them.
Yeah. Okay. So I will say, I thought that was so crazy, and it is crazy, but I actually might understand his confusion a little bit. Earlier in the interview, he mentions his son, Timothy Cabot, who had murdered his mother, a B-movie actress named Susan Cabot, with a barbell in 1986. And that's a whole fucked up tangent.
What?
Because I guess Susan wasn't mentally well, and she had been giving Timothy, who had dwarfism, growth injections derived from cadavers that would make him grow, which is like Frankenstein level. Yeah.
What the fuck?
Very
One
fucked up.
could argue that was self-defense.
And they did.
Yes.
So he was ultimately charged with involuntary manslaughter due to Cabot's compromised mental state and Timothy's allegation that it was self-defense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Originally,
I'm with Timmy on this one.
yeah.
I'm with Timmy.
Yeah. So originally he claimed that it was an intruder in a ninja mask who had killed his mother, because he didn't want to say he did it,
Right.
obviously. And the reason Christopher thought Timothy was his son was because basically, like, Susan had told him that he was an English officer and that he died. And he's like, see, man, English officer that died, like, that's me because Ryan's daughter. That's what he thought.
Oh my gosh.
So
it's not even confirmed that Timothy's his actual son.
he's not his son, because this is even crazier.
Oh my God.
So
what?
All that aside, it's believed that Timothy's father was King Hussein of Jordan and not Christopher Jones. Like, apparently a DNA test proved that.
Not an English gentleman at all, then.
Nope.
Oh my God.
And also, like, how did he with
this
a
is
B
why
movie
he didn't
actress?
know how many kids he had.
Yep, it is. Timothy is the confusion, which is,
Wow.
fair, actually.
Well, okay. Jesus.
So
Does he have any kind of relationship with any of his kids?
he did.
Okay.
So that being said, he had 7 children, or that being confirmed, let's say. He had 7 children total, 4 boys, Segan, Tower, Jeremy, and Christopher, and 3 daughters, Kaylin, Dellen, and Jennifer.
His first. Jennifer.
Yes, Jennifer was his first. So after Strasberg, he was partnered with 2 other women during the lost years. Which, lovingly referred to as the lost years. So there was Carrie Abernathy and Paula McKenna, and he had children with them. So those are the women. So he had children with, he said 4 or 5 women, but it seems to be 3.
3. Okay.
Yeah, unless there's something I don't know, which is very, very, very possible. So the DeBar interview, we're back to just the crazy facts that got revealed in this. The DeBar interview also featured Christopher alleging that his managers were trying to steal from him and send him to a cult-like therapy group where he was treated like a sex slave. It also mentioned that Montgomery Clift wanted to sleep with him at one point, and he turned him down. And that he was being considered for Al Pacino's part in The Godfather.
Oh, yes, of course.
Right. So these are all things Christopher said, and it's not possible to back any of them up. If you
Aside
can,
from the fact that Christopher said them.
Christopher said them. He said them in this interview. It is in print, whatever. But like, yeah, that's about all I can really say. So if you're listening and you can tell me more, please, by the way, with any of this, please tell me. I tried to find everything I could. And there's a lot, but there's also very limited things. So one wild little bit of trivia that is true, however, is that Quentin Tarantino had been a fan of the Looking Glass War and had tried to get Christopher to play the part of Zed in Pulp Fiction. And if you don't remember who Zed is, he is the guy who rapes Ving Rhames and then gets his comeuppance when Rhames shoots him in the dick so that he'll slowly bleed out.
Yeah.
And Christopher did not take the part, but Tarantino remained a fan. Zed's dead. I love that.
Zed's dead. Imagine if he had taken that part.
I know. It's kind of like, and instead he took this like just nothing part at the same year that like didn't. It was the same time, I feel like.
God.
Honestly, I thought that the Pamela DeBar interview was all I was going to find about the lost years of Christopher Jones because it was his final interview.
Mm-hmm.
But then I found this interesting book called Death Valley Superstars, Occasionally Fatal Adventures in Filmland. And it had an entire chapter about Jones that started with the author, Daryl Haney, attending Jones's funeral as someone who did not personally know him, but who had been interested in writing about him when he learned of his death. So he was like, I want to write about this guy. Oh, he just died. I'm going to go to his funeral because I can.
Right.
Which was at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, of course, because that's where he's buried. So this was in 2014. Haney had already been researching Jones by the time he attended the funeral, and he knew enough to notice that the attending reverend delivered a eulogy that seemed to have been quilted together with facts culled from the internet. That's what he said specifically, which I don't blame him because it's hard to find information about this guy that's real.
Right.
And that there were holes in the accuracy of his words. But soon Haney was able to piece together Christopher's final years with a little more clarity. He had connected with a woman named Sherry Dodd, who had also been at the funeral. He'd heard rumors that she was Jones's manager in his final years. But that's kind of a loose term because really she was a longtime friend / ex-girlfriend and a very forgiving one at that. By her own account, Dodd had met Jones on July 4th, 1973. He was in his self-described Tarzan phase at this time, wearing worn-out shoes with long, scraggly hair, but she still recognized him because this 1973, it's not that many years since he was like big. And then, get this, he walked up to her when she was getting something out of her car in a dark Hollywood parking lot and asked for a hairbrush because that's not weird at all. He also told her that his name was James. And asked her to follow him into an alley, which she did.
Oh my God.
That's not smart, Sherry.
Sherry. Come on, Sherry.
And then he grabbed her and she pulled away, saying she needed to meet with friends. She's just casually like, oh, you just grabbed me in a dark alley. You know what? I need to meet with some friends. Like this story. He asked where she lived, and she actually told him that information, which is entirely insane.
Sherry.
And then he said, maybe I'll see you, because that's what you say after assaulting a stranger.
What the fuck?
So weeks later, a metal toy came flying through Sherry's window. And when she looked out the window, she saw Christopher Jones looking up at her. He still was saying his name was James, and Sherry thinks that the constant comparisons and his own obsession with James Dean had become part of his, quote, madness, and I would agree with that. She's still like, come into my house. I can't.
Sherry, where are your survival instincts, Sherry?
She does not have them.
You're not an 18-year-old.
No. This is like a woman. She's a grown-ass woman.
This is a fully formed woman. Oh my God.
But eventually he did admit his real identity, but not until he'd been living with Sherry for a few weeks. I don't know how. She just let him live. Yeah.
She just
Yep.
Shook him in.
Shook him in.
Took
and
him in like a
I think
stray.
I think like she didn't say they had a relationship. Yeah, they did. You know.
He was a hobosexual.
That was good. I liked that.
Thank you.
By her own account, he was lucid some days, and other days he'd awaken her by grabbing her face and threatening to tie her up.
Oh my God, Sherry!
He also would do naked swims in the koi pool of a local Japanese restaurant after hours. And walk home naked. Ever forgiving and naive, Sherry did kick him out when things got especially bad. The catalyst was when he broke her TV after watching The Looking Glass War on it and saying that he, quote, didn't like the way it was cut. So he broke a TV that wasn't his.
Oh my. Oh.
Sherry
so he threw a tantrum.
Yep. He's like, didn't make me look good. My jawline looks better from the other side. Yeah. So Sherry made him leave and subletted the apartment for a couple months. She was like, I'm out of here. You're out of here. You can't, Yep.
This space has bad vibes. I gotta go.
Yeah. Yeah. You are bad vibes, sir. I will say it because nobody else will. But when she was living there again, after that couple months had passed, he snuck up on her from behind, covered her mouth, dragged her inside, and pushed her onto the bed. She broke free and ran outside where a neighbor intervened and scared Chris off.
Oh my gosh.
She was estranged from him for years, namely the years in which he fathered 6 other children besides Jennifer and went through at least 2 serious relationships with Carrie Abernathy and Paula McKenna, which we've just discussed.
Mm-hmm.
So she was estranged from him until she caught up with him after learning of his whereabouts in a tabloid called The Hollywood Star.
Okay.
You see, Jones lived in an apartment building run by Bill Dakota, the publisher of The Hollywood Star. Dakota was infatuated with Jones and regularly featured tidbits about him during the time he was his tenant in The Hollywood Star. And apparently he featured such large tidbits that people knew exactly where he lived because that's how Sherry found him.
Wow.
Yep. And at the time Sherry reconnected with Jones, she said that he was doing much better, but Dakota eventually had to evict Jones for not paying his rent, sure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And also filling...
With like, what was it?
What was he doing to
what
make
was
any
he
money?
doing? How was he surviving? Like, what was he? Where was he working?
All I'm hearing is like sculpting and painting and wandering the streets. And like, I just feel like he was, like you said, a hobosexual. I think that's accurate. He was like shacking up with different women and like, he was kind of he used women a lot.
Right.
So that he was just like a leech a little bit during this time.
Professional homosexual.
Yes. So yeah, Dakota had to evict him for not paying his rent, which makes sense. But also another reason he, evicted him was because he had filled the apartment with wild snakes and birds that he had captured and, quote, freed in his living space. Apparently there was bird shit all over the walls and a snake had slithered down Jones' bath drain and wound up in another apartment. And like he even mentions, the guy that wrote this, Daryl Haney, like he even mentions that like this guy is a tabloid, dude, like should I even find him credible? But he was like, nevertheless, I did find him credible. Like, so I don't know if he questions that as him as a source, but like, I don't know. The guy really, he liked him a lot. I think even if he wasn't paying his rent, he probably would have found a way to let him stay, but it's like
if only for the story. He was paying him in stories, in tabloid fodder.
But then it's like a snake is crawling up from your drain. You gotta
it's
go.
affecting the other tenants. That was crossing the line.
Yeah, and again, the mental illness of it all. So, sometime after this, Christopher suffered an abdominal hemorrhage for unknown causes, though many suspect drugs, and that nearly killed him. In fact, he was declared dead in the ambulance on the way to Cedars-Sinai. He recovered in a Hollywood rehabilitation facility called Briar Oak, which was on Sunset. And at this point, Sherry reconnected with him once again, and she said that he was doing much better and that all the bad vibes were gone. We got to call this episode Bad Vibes.
Bad vibes. Part 2, bad vibes.
Yep. But they're gone. The hemorrhage had left him.
Finally, the bad vibes are finally gone.
Yeah, that's what it took, a near-death experience, but they're gone.
And rehab.
Yep. The hemorrhage left him with a permanent feeding tube for the rest of his days. And Sherry stepped in to help him find doctors for corrective surgeries and deal with True Hollywood Story, who were badgering him about doing interviews for an episode about him that he did not want to be a part of. I tried to find this episode. I couldn't. I know that it was made, but I couldn't find it. So,
but it was made without his
cooperation? I think he just didn't want to be interviewed for it, you know?
So he didn't cooperate for it.
Right.
Like,
but I think he did ask her to kind of like speak a little bit on his behalf. And I think that's like where she said she was his manager and whatever, just so that she could
she could speak for him.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she even let Christopher live with her again 17 or 18.
Sherry.
This is some 17 or 18 years after the first time she made that mistake. And I mean, compassion is one thing, but truly prioritize your safety, woman. Like,
literally, my goodness.
During this time, his kids were coming by regularly and things got a bit crowded. So he eventually lived with his ex, Paula McKenna, in Seal Beach. However, he and Sherry remained friends and continued to stay in touch on the phone for years. One day he said he wasn't feeling well, and he soon found out he had gallbladder cancer, and it wasn't long until it claimed his life in 2014 at the age of 72. Now,
that's a pretty dang long life.
Yeah. It is for
having
gone through such a long Tarzan phase.
That's a long life for having had such a long ass Tarzan phase, for sure.
Yeah. Now, I want to lay Chris Jones to rest by circling back to his funeral. Yes, according to Daryl Haney, the Reverend was wrong about some things, but his eulogy also mentioned Chris's softer side. For instance, Christopher was fascinated by historical mysteries and the unknown. He collected ancient
Much like you, Courtney.
Yes. We share something in common,
wow,
Christopher Jones.
What kindred spirits you two.
He collected ancient coins and statues of ancient deities. Those are not things that I do, but good for you. He read philosophy and poetry, enjoyed watching the History Channel, hiked in Griffith Park, and loved his children.
Hiked in Griffith Park. You probably lived there for a little bit.
Right? Yeah. Probably saw some shit go down at night. And he loved his children, all 7 or 8 of them, I suppose. But he had wanted to be a good family man at this point in his life and had largely devoted his attentions to painting and sculpting, as well as his kids. And I think that's how his family would like to remember him. Mm-hmm. Many of his children and ex-wives or girlfriends were in attendance, and losing a father carries unique heaviness for anyone. And though I don't have personal accounts of their relationships with Chris, I'm sure the event of his death was significant for them in some way, right? So maybe Chris was right that some things are better left unsaid, but his story was a hell of a ride regardless.
A Ferrari ride.
Hell yeah. And so, I struggled with this. If you want to pay your respects to Christopher, what offering do you give to this man? It's tough. What would you say? I have my own idea.
I would do a little Hot Wheels Ferrari.
That's what I said.
That's
what I said. I said a Lamborghini, a Lotus, or a Ferrari.
Yeah.
Like a little one because he said in his interview that that's all he ever wanted at one point. And I would also say maybe like, I don't know, you could also maybe burn some sage, make sure there's no bad vibes.
No bad vibes.
No bad vibes. And also just, in general, get rid of all those demons that followed him and many of those closest to him throughout his life. He's located in the Holly Cathedral Mausoleum extension outside. It's the outside mausoleum, like by the water. And he's very close to the Baron. So if you're visiting the Baron, you can say hi to Christopher Jones as well. We'll link to his Find a Grave in our show notes so you can find that out. And yeah, I guess that's where we'll leave it. Thank you, Christopher Jones, for at the very least being interesting.
Wow.
That's everything. That's everything I could find. I would love to know your takeaways from this, like what you expected going in and where your where you're at now? Like, what are your feelings? It's a lot. It's a lot.
I had zero expectations going in, as I always do.
Right.
Honestly, I was expecting him to get into legal trouble. But I didn't. I most definitely did not expect him to just like disappear. For, at basically the height of his career, just completely like.
And then blame like Sharon Tate and Jim Morrison's deaths like as the thing that messed him up. I mean, but it's like something clearly messed him up. Like that's the part, to me, that's the most credible part of him having had a relationship with Sharon Tate, if he had one, is like something was significant enough to rattle him, And I mean, obviously the Manson murders rattled a lot of people in LA or not. Like it was, that was a huge
for
thing.
mental illness, people with mental illness, which it sounds like he might have been a little bit bipolar. Not that I'm a professional or anything, so I don't want to diagnose him or anything, but a lot of times a death can bring on an episode. So that whether the death is like he perceived it as something very personal.
Yeah, and he had at least a connection to her too.
Yeah,
like it was very real. His manager was like, "I've got to go deal with this."
Right. Honestly, surprised that he lived for as long as he did.
That's what I think too. Yeah.
I'm very surprised that he lived until he was 72. I was not expecting that at all. I was expecting. I mean, perhaps he just couldn't afford a Ferrari, so he couldn't go out that way.
At that point, yeah.
At that point. Yeah. So, but I was fully expecting him to go out in a blaze of glory.
I know. And I really do think that he probably would have preferred that, actually,
To cancer?
Well, not even just to cancer, but to like...
To anything.
To all of those years of just such they're truly lost years.
Yeah.
They're just like so confusing. He hardly remembers them well. Like he was already like Jesse said from the beginning, he was living like a ghost.
Yeah.
He was living like a ghost. So
he was
a ghost long before he died, I think. And I don't know. I feel for him on that level. It's because I feel for him on the mental illness level and on the just, that I just don't think that's any way to live. I mean, yes, like you said, cancer is a terrible way to go, but at the same time, so is just like slowly disappearing. It's actually like more painful.
That's like terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a terrifying life.
Yeah. So it's like, but a lot of people, I don't know. I mean, I think he clearly made his mark. Yeah. He had a moment. Like,
Quentin Tarantino wanted to cast him.
Yeah.
Offered him.
Yeah. As like, honestly, and like I said, I have some empathy for him, obviously, but like also he kind of deserved to be shot in the dick. So like it would have been kind of cathartic to see him in that role.
I kind of wish I would have been able to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. And rewatched it now after doing this.
But
whole
imagine him he would have been so insufferable. I feel like he would have been so insufferable if he had done that role.
Yeah. I mean, it's
what a
and you know what I think about?
I'm thinking of his life, and all I can think of is what a shame.
Yeah.
What a goddamn shame.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Like it for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
But it's like I picture, it's like it's that thing where you're walking down the street and you see somebody who's schizophrenic or something. Not that he was, but you know what I mean? I'm just thinking about that, like where you're like, oh God, I wonder, like how, it's like, how do I help this person? What's your
story? How did you get here?
How did you get here? Exactly. And I feel like he was that person in some way for a lot of people for a long time who probably never even knew he was famous. I mean, you got to think by the time the 80s happened, at least it's like if he's wandering around like that, like there's plenty of people who are like, that's just a crazy guy.
Yeah. It's
they don't know
Tarzan of Griffith Park.
Exactly. Like, so it's just, it's bizarre, and it makes me wonder about some of the people that you see, you know, on a daily basis here, and what's really what the real story is, you know.
If they too turned down a role from Quentin Tarantino
and decided to turn their back in the height of fame on their, you know, entire career. I don't know. It's wild. So
wild.
Thank you all for hanging in with this one. Again, I can't remind you enough that there are good dead people and there are not so good dead people, and we're not gonna just do good dead people, because
no, we get to do complicated stories too.
That's right. Dead people are complicated too.
People are complicated. So yes, thank you so much for listening and hanging with us, and visit the show notes for any more information on where to find Christopher.
Great.
May you rest in peace.
That's right. May you rest in peace, and may all the bad vibes drift away.
If we've piqued your curiosity, please subscribe on Substack at deadandkindofamous.substack.com. We list each episode there along with photos, newsletters, sources, and more. You can also find us wherever you get your podcasts.
Dead and Kind of Famous is written, researched, and produced by Courtney Blomquist. It is co-hosted by Marissa Rivera. We tag team on socials. Jesse Russell and Courtney Blomquist do our editing.
Until next time, you might not be famous, but you got a story to tell and you're not dead yet.